Hello everyone and welcome to another Daily Muppet. In today's video we're going to talk about Onana, which is nearly there now, and then talk about a couple of little things about that. Talk about Rasmus Hojlund and what comes next there, the Amrabat story, Suzuki, Rashford, Maguire losing the captaincy, and much more. All right, so let's get into it then. So obviously over the weekend, there was Sunday night news on Onana from the Italians saying done deal, moving forward, agreement reached, all of that. Just to get this out of the way, as I said, technically from sources around United, as I tweeted out, they're not confirming that the deal is done yet. In fact, they say it isn't totally agreed as of yet. And obviously that's it. We're in a funny position now as the Muppeteers, former kind of ITK things, where I'm kind of constantly warning people against jumping the gun a little bit. On July 7th, it was supposed to be done within a week, and it was like close to all agreed and all of that. And as I pointed out at that time, from my sources as well, it wasn't really that close. It wasn't imminent. And I think all of that is correct. And the same sources indicate as of yesterday night that it wasn't quite all the way agreed. However, it was very close. And it's kind of at the point where it's probably safe to say done deal, nothing to worry about. It's going to happen. He's going to be on the tour. That's the plan right now. And it is the plan. The plan is right now that he has his medical tomorrow, Tuesday, that it gets done enough for him to fly in, deal with some things, and get on into his medical tomorrow. That's the plan. There's a few things to wrap up in order to make that whole, as well as some travel-related things and things like that. But that is the plan right now, that he could have his medical tomorrow and then either fly with the team or travel with the team to Edinburgh Tuesday night, or maybe travel with, separately to meet up with them on Wednesday and then leave from there to the US, which is where they will be going at that point in time. It should get done. It should be done around, I think the end up price may be 55, but it's going to be with those hard add-ons. It's going to be with those tough add-ons in that case, and on good payment terms for United. A couple other details, as far as I understand from hearing from a few people, this has been in the works a little bit longer than it's been let on. Obviously, as I've said for a long time, the keeper side of things has been in the works for a long time. And I've got a bit more evidence that as of maybe end of May, early June, this deal was practically viewed as inevitable. And so it was probably on the cards for the last 6 to 8 weeks that David De Gea would not be returning to Manchester United and at all. And so, yeah, just keeping that in mind. It's just an interesting thing. And that does tend to happen with United and their transfers. You see stories like with Casemiro, where it was actually discussed throughout earlier in the summer, even though it only happened much later. Well, as I understand, it's not that dissimilar to the Onana situation. So just some interesting stuff there. So that should get done. I'm still waiting, of course, for like your top English sources to confirm it, because they'll confirm it in England when they get it confirmed from sources around the club that it is totally done. But there's a reason they're not yet, and that doesn't mean that there's anything wrong, but it doesn't mean that it's incorrect to say that it isn't totally finished. Again, it doesn't really matter. We're splitting hairs here to some degree, but like I said, I think it was accurate backing things off a little in prior times. At this point in time, it wouldn't be accurate to say this isn't a deal that's happening or isn't a deal that is expected to get done literally any second now, officially. It's 99.9% of the way there. It'll get confirmed, and hopefully he gets on a plane and can get into the UK today and to his medical tomorrow. That is the plan. That has been the plan for a few days. So it's not like it's not all expected. Done deal, not done deal, it doesn't really matter. It's just for the sake of accuracy. It's more for the sake of me putting things that I know are totally true out than it is like, don't get excited about Onana. Get excited. It's happening. He's signing. He's joining United. We got a new keeper, and it is going to be hugely transformative for Manchester United. I think between him and Mason Mount, these are two massively transformative signings. Squeezing the pitch like you saw versus Leeds, having to keep her play higher, playing out the back, being able to build up in Erik ten Hag's preferred shape of that 3-1-6. And that includes Mount being someone who plays in the front line instead of Eriksen having to come deeper all the time to pick the ball up, which means we can have an extra presser like when Fred plays, an extra ball winner like when Fred plays, but within a lot more controlled manner. So I think they go hand in hand and make a huge, huge difference to the style of play. Regardless of the striker, which is a major thing that we need, the style of play will be defined by having that midfield setup and that goalkeeper. And that's what we've got. And that is a win. That is a significant win for 100 million to get starting quality players that transform the style of the team. So obviously, next thing is that striker situation. A lot of people thought it would come before the goalkeeper, or even it would get done and the goalkeeper wouldn't happen at all. But here we are. So Rasmus Hojlund, this is a funny one because obviously what we've got going on still is this, huge width, right? And how much does Rasmus Hojlund cost? What is it gonna be to get him? And you've got some people saying 100 million euros and others saying 65, others saying 70. Well, and then you had early reports saying like 50 or something like that. And nobody really seems to know. As I said, the indications I got early on were that the high price being briefed came from United's side to slow things down. And that was like a month ago. And it has been slowed down. But now it's time to address it. It's obviously someone United have been talking to. They tried to make offers with players. And what that tells me is it's probably not 100 million because they wouldn't be in discussions if it were. I think I've said that before. If it was 100 million euros, they'd go for Gonzalo Ramos at 80. If it was 80 million euros, you'd probably go for Gonzalo Ramos at 80. But it's not. So what seems to be occurring at the moment is that they are looking to raise funds, right? Because again, Onana was done and Mount were done because they were top targets of Erik ten Hag that were feasible, viable deals that could get done and get done at reasonable prices for the quality of player. They were ready to move, no issues, ready-made players that can 100% come straight into the team. And that was great. And then in terms of the Hojlund now, they're trying to raise money. The budget has been confusing. We'll talk about that in a minute. But they obviously need to raise money for Rasmus Hojlund. I mentioned this, but I think that this ties into everything, which is where it gets a little confusing now. Now that striker and goalkeeper are out the way and the budget is almost spent, maybe there's 15, 20 million left, gets a little more confusing. Because the funds needed for striker have to come from sales without replacement. So it's not like sell Maguire and spend it on a striker, because then your backup center backs are Lindelof and Shaw, and you're starting are Varane and Lisandro Martinez coming off injuries, and this is not ideal, right? You need another center back, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So you need to sell without replacement. Well, who can you sell without replacement? Let's say you've got 20 million left. You can sell Dean Henderson for 20 to 25. That is essentially a done deal. That has been lined up for the last few weeks. Dean Henderson is approved to move. The minute Onana is done, that deal will occur. So that'll get you up to like 40 million. It doesn't quite work this way, but again, it's another 20 and it's pure profit, which is great. Dean Henderson and Elanga sales are a big deal. Pure profit. Anthony Elanga deal should be happening soon as well. So you can raise another 30 million in sales there, get yourself up to maybe we've got 50 million in the budget now. And that's kind of what I expect Rasmus Hojlund to cost. 50 million pounds or so up front with some add-ons on, with a lot of add-ons. Say something like the Bruno deal where there's a lot of add-ons structured in. And I think that's the way that it's going to work, where, yeah, if he ends up being a 20-goal scorer, if he ends up, winning awards, if he ends up doing this, if we end up winning trophies, then you're going to end up paying 70, 80 million euros for him in the end, but only 55, 60 up front. And I think that's where we're headed with this. I think that's what's going to come next is Onana finishes, Dean Henderson out, Anthony Elanga out. Obviously, still working on Fred, on Van de Beek, on some of these other sales, on Tellus, seeing if you can raise some funds. Players that don't necessarily need one-for-one replacements because they've already been replaced. Fred has been replaced by Mount, and you have youth like Hannibal and Kabi Mainu who can play in those positions where you're going to get 400 to 600 minutes total. And I think one of them will. So those are the players to sell without replacement to bring in Rasmus Hojlund. And then I think that is going to be what happens over the next few weeks. I don't think it's very particularly imminent, but if the Henderson sale goes quick, if Elanga goes quick, then you're going to see that offer for Hojlund come in. And I think maybe by end of the month, you see some concrete stuff happening there. Then moving on to Sofiane Hammerbat. And this is a challenging one because you need that striker first. Then budget-wise, what do you have left? Well, it depends on all the sales you can make, and you probably need to get that sale of Scott McTominay for this one. You need solid offers for him, but you don't know you're going to get them, and you have these other things to address, and I think that's why it's not a huge topic. The fact of the matter on Sofiane Amrabat is United have spoken to him and his representative. He's very interested in the move. The Spanish clubs have not come in for him, liked by all parties. It's a deal that can happen if United's budget gets to it and the right sales come out, okay? And that is really all that there is to say about it. There is interest from Liverpool. They nearly signed him in January. There were issues between Klopp and Amrabat and his agent that caused that deal to fall through. I don't know if those issues have been resolved or if it's a personal grudge now that's going to hold on that could prevent him from signing for Liverpool. But yeah, obviously there's some other clubs that could be interested, but he's very interested in United and vice versa. It's just if the budget can get there. And then, on to a few other points. Let's talk about Suzuki. That's one that obviously could also just happen anyway. For it is a real deal. 5 million euros maybe brought in. We'll see what happens after Onana and after Dean Henderson are sold. Shouldn't take too much of the budget. Maybe they're going to sell Kovar, get him on loan again. Maybe get him on loan because he'd probably be worth more later, but he should be worth a fair bit at this point in time. But yeah, so there's that one. Maguire, big story here, right, as well. So Maguire, as I understand it, very much did intend to stay at United, to work, to get his place back in the team, all of that. Now, obviously, over the weekend, he's been told by Erik ten Hag he's no longer captain. He put out his statement. So there's one of two things to this. Either he didn't see that coming, in which case, does it change that he wanted to stay in and fight for his place? Probably. If he didn't expect that, then that changes things a little bit. If he did expect it, then it doesn't change that he was willing to fight for his place and willing to stay at United. I don't know. And I'm sure we'll find out soon. Obviously, you get the stories assessing all options and things, but that's a really easy story to write, frankly. Within 5 minutes, you have somebody saying he's assessing all his options and things like that. I think it's a little opportunistic of the reports doing that. But point being, there's truth and there is to it. He would move on if he was going to go to a big club, but there's a lot of complications here, not the least of which is United have 26 million in amortization on the books still for him. Significant wages. If you sell him, it may not be a gain. That gives you the ability to buy anyone this summer to replace him because you're going to have to pay off wages and all sorts of stuff. You need a significant offer to come in. That's the problem. And West Ham only offered a loan at this point in time with an option later. That's not going to do it. And so I'm not at the moment thinking he's going to leave simply because I don't see the reality that allows him to leave. For good money. I don't see it. And so we're going to have to see what happens with that because I'm just not sure. The other issue that I have with it is that you need to replace kind of Varane over the next couple of years because his kind of dwindling. You need to, and his fitness is questionable now, right? You need to buy, your next center back you buy should not be another backup. You don't want to sell Maguire and buy a backup. And then Varane's declining and you need a starter, but now you still have 4 center backs and you're back in this glut of all these players in there. We need to do what we're doing elsewhere. Not buying Eriksen's backup to replace Fred, but buying Mount to replace Eriksen to push Fred down. Buying Onana to push everybody else down and De Gea out of the club, right? You buy at the top level to push depth down, and that has been a big improvement. That's why we have depth in certain positions. And that's why we've pushed Maguire and Lindelof to being pretty good depth by buying Varane and Lisandro Martinez. We need to do the same. And so if you sell Maguire, can you get a starting level potential center back in? I don't think so. And that's why I think next year makes more sense. Next year, you could buy a center back as like your main priority to replace Rafael Varane, push him down, and let Maguire go. It makes a lot of sense to me. That's how I see it. We'll see. Obviously, the other issues on some of these sales are like with Fred. Offer was 5 million from Galatasaray or Fenerbahce, one of the Turkish sides. Fulham was like 6 million. It's not going to happen because it's not worth getting rid of a player who offers potential use, for that little, for the qualities that he can provide. They're going to want to get good value, 15 to 20 million, and then he could go in that case. And that's understandable. So, there's complications with these outs and how it goes. I don't see how we get beyond signing Hojlund and then maybe Amrabat if Scott goes. I don't see how we get to a center back. I don't see how we get to these other positions. I don't even see that we get to Amrabat personally at this point in time. But that's where the question becomes about funds. Right now, it still looks like we're not getting like this big glut of money coming in to be spent, right? Got Onana done, Mount done on reasonable fees, but it is mid-July. Season starts in less than a month. Hojlund is held up. We're going to have to sell to buy. So there has been a bit of a shift, right, in the funds being available and money being able to be spent, where it seems like things were really held up for a while. And I wish I could say what the reason for that was, or speculate, because obviously with the takeover stuff, it's dead quiet. Absolutely dead quiet. And it's at the point where, it's hard because even if I hear something that I think is totally, totally correct and is very well sourced and is something I believe, it doesn't really matter because there's some reason why it is so dead quiet and that nothing is getting put out there, nothing is being talked about. Is it as simple as nobody's hearing from anyone and everybody's waiting for the Glazers? Maybe. I'm not totally convinced that's true, by the way. But there's something going on that is holding everything up from occurring right now. And, it's hard to say exactly what it is at this point in time. So we're kind of just obviously all waiting. But in terms of funds, obviously it's not like there's a lot of money, but it's also not held up. It's a bit getting to sort of business as usual. And obviously that could be a little concerning, right? That it's kind of business as usual almost. Not heavy spending, because we spent heavy last year, but decent spending. And kind of a normal activity. So one could read into how they will. It may just be the fact that it's not going to be done during summer. So it's normal business for now, even if it's to get done in August, September, or October, the whole takeover. So one can only speculate, but I mean, by the end of this month, hopefully that means we actually hear something. All right. So anyway, that's what I've got for today. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications on. See you in the next one.